Feds confirming Donald Trump's lawyer, Micheal Cohen, is under criminal investigation. Trump personally called him today against standard legal advice. And right now, we're going to hear from a man who was inside the courtroom today, Cohen's adversary in the Stormy Daniels case, attorney Micheal Avenatti. I'm going to ask him what went down, what he saw, and why he says he now has a clue about when Micheal Cohen could plead the Fifth Amendment in this case. That big interview is the lead block of our show. I'm going to turn to it momentarily. But it comes amidst this rising heat on Trump. James Comey taking on the president and going there.
Honestly, never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know.
The former head of the FBI, a Republican, talking about his new book that everyone wants their hands on and making a stunning assertion about an issue that's at the heart of this criminal probe into Trump's link to Putin. If there's any doubt as to what you just heard your former FBI director say, I'm just going to play it for you again.
Honestly, never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know.
It's possible. Those truly unusual comments come from James Comey as Trump's lawyer faces what could be an existential threat to his career and his freedom, with new details coming in, as I mentioned, this New York courtroom today, a legal fight that could go all the way to the Supreme Court. What's at stake may include secret tapes of Donald Trump or his associates. The feds now saying Cohen is formally, quote, under criminal investigation. They're also telling the court they have evidence supporting this emergency raid on Cohen, but some of the hottest details are redacted. The feds say they've spent months probing Cohen's personal business dealings, and that's not all. Because Cohen and Trump are challenging this seizure of the evidence, the feds came back blasting today at Cohen. They say they seized this evidence because of his misconduct, and they go further, saying, and this is important, they say today that Micheal Cohen doesn't really practice law, and he basically only works for one person anyway. If that sounds familiar, it is a concept from The Godfather that a former U.S. senator raised right here on the beat this week.
Let me explain the Trump Organization. There's a wonderful scene in the Mario Puzo's The Godfather where Tom Hagen is asked about his representation of Michael Corleone. And he says, I have a very unusual law practice. I have a single client who insists on hearing bad news immediately.
I have a single client who insists on hearing bad news immediately. Think about that and this incredible report breaking tonight that Donald Trump was calling Micheal Cohen today. This is all about whether Cohen equals Trump. Now, that was one expert's view. Tonight, I can tell you the feds agree. They say in these filings under oath here, he has exceedingly few clients beyond Trump, and that he does basically, quote, no legal work. He sent 0 emails to Trump. This looks bad for Cohen. It looks like the effort by Micheal Cohen and Trump to protect this evidence that the feds already have is backfiring. You know, it's never a good sign when your bodyguard needs a bodyguard or when your lawyer needs a lawyer. Now, Donald Trump's lawyer needed a lawyer really badly today, and now the feds say Donald Trump's lawyer doesn't really practice law, which raises a question that is hanging over all of this and that we can report tonight terrifies Trump. If Micheal Cohen isn't Donald Trump's lawyer, what is he? Well, in the last 5 minutes, the New York Times has a new report that begins. Trump's advisors have concluded a wide-ranging corruption investigation in New York into Micheal Cohen poses a greater and more imminent threat to the president than even the special counsel's investigation. One man who was in the courtroom today and has this vested interest in the case is my guest, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, Micheal Avenatti. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ari. Good to have you.
When you look at Micheal Cohen under this type of strain, and what the Fed said today, that he's not really a lawyer, does that ring true to you? Haven't you guys been litigating against each other?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Ari, this is something that we've been saying for weeks now. I've been stating that our case and the likely fallout from it was going to be substantial and was going to be more of a threat ultimately to Micheal Cohen and the president than the Mueller investigation. I've been saying this for weeks. A lot of people doubted us at first. I don't think there's a lot of people doubting us at this point.
Is that because of your client Stormy Daniels, or is it because of things you learned about Micheal Cohen and what he does for Trump?
Well, I think it's both. I think we've brought a lot of of attention to bear on a number of these issues. I think the raids that occurred on Monday, the timing of those, the scope of them, et cetera, is a direct result. I know it's a direct result of a lot of the work that we've done over the last 5 weeks. But with each passing 24 hours, Ari, this matter becomes more and more serious for Micheal Cohen and the president. This is not some small investigation that was thrown together. I mean, this has the attention of some very, very qualified lawyers in the Southern District of New York.
You're talking about the federal prosecutors that are bearing down on Micheal Cohen today. You're talking about reading these case files today. This really seemed to backfire. I mean, they took a 2x4 to Micheal Cohen's head, and they said, not only are you not a good lawyer, you're not really someone who practices law, and you do a bunch of other shady things hiding behind your JD. Have you seen a prosecutorial filing like this?
Not a lot, maybe on one other occasion in 18 years. But let me tell you why that is so critically important in this context. If they find that the communications between Micheal Cohen and the president were not in furtherance of Micheal Cohen practicing law, then there is a high likelihood that those are not attorney-client privilege communications.
You just said something that terrifies the White House, that Donald Trump knows. I want to put up on the screen this Washington Post headline. Trump's allies worry federal investigators may have already seized these recordings made by Cohen. Quote, it was his standard practice to do it. He recorded business and political conversations. That could be third-party verification of things he discussed with people around Trump. It could include Donald Trump. You're saying that part of the reason why the feds went in today, and you were in that courtroom, and said Micheal Cohen's not really a lawyer, is because they want to say those aren't really privileged lawyer tapes.
Well, if there are tapes or whatever the communications are. But, Ari, I want to set the stage for a moment for your viewers, because this is important. Imagine you are communicating with an individual that you believe is your lawyer and that you have privilege with. So you're freewheeling in your communications with him because you think they're protected under the attorney-client privilege. And you do this for a number of years as it relates to a number of, let's just describe them as hairy issues. One day, the FBI kicks in the door, actually doesn't kick in the door, they knock, they're courteous. They raid his office and his home. They obtain these communications.
Right.
And you find out that...
And that's what terrifies him. I want you to stay with me. Matt Apuzzo, who broke the story that I mentioned and broke within the last 10 minutes, is joining me by phone. Michael's going to stay. Matt Apuzzo from the New York Times. Michael was just walking through why Donald Trump's most candid conversations ever might not actually be privileged as he long thought they were. Is that part of what you found in your reporting of why this is scaring them tonight?
Yeah, but the bigger problem with the reason that this is so scary for people around the president, for the president himself, is they don't know what's been taken. Right, so the FBI came in and they took all of these records, and they don't know what the FBI has because the search warrants were super broad. They took stuff from a safety deposit box. They took stuff from his cell phones. They took information from his computers, and we don't know what's on it. And I don't just mean we, the reporters, don't know. Even the lawyers for Micheal Cohen and Donald Trump, they don't know what's on.
You're sort of putting it a little reversed. Donald Trump does know the worst things that he's talked to Micheal Cohen about since he joined the Trump Organization in 2006.
Yeah, but he doesn't know what evidence that has been seized that Micheal Cohen has documented.
Yeah, of course. But the flip is, and I want to ask you about this, when you write that they now, around Trump, see this as a greater and more imminent threat to the president than the special counsel's investigation, is that based on a view or fear that there are things in the past that Micheal Cohen was in on that could be more damaging than the Mueller probe?
I think the view is from both the uncertainty and also from the fact that this puts Micheal Cohen in extreme legal jeopardy. And the concern, of course, is, they felt they had a real understanding of the Mueller investigation. They kind of knew where their vulnerabilities were. They knew where this was, generally headed. They don't know. This is a big unknown for them. I'm going to
bring Michael back into this because Matt is describing the uncertainty. In my experience with clients, although uncertainty is something we all deal with in life, the clients who get the most nervous are the ones who think they did something that they're worried about people finding out about. I put that frame to you for your remarks, and I want to ask you as well, you said there may be a clue to when Michael Cohen next has a heat on him and might have to plead the Fifth. Tell us about that as well.
Well, let me tell you a statement that was made in court today by Michael Cohen's counsel. And in fact, this was in a declaration that he had filed before, I believe he filed it yesterday, before today's hearing. He attested to the following, Ari. He said that the number of documents that were seized that may involve the attorney-client privilege is in the thousands, if not millions. Those are not my words. Those are his words. Now, that's a lot of attorney-client privilege communications, and as you stated at the outset, we know that those communications, if they are privileged, or if they believe they were privileged, he only had one client. So it's not as if these thousands, if not millions, quote, these are quotes, those communications would all pertain to his work on behalf of the president.
Right, which goes back to even if Donald Trump doesn't do email, you're saying that he, by invoking attorney-client privilege for that much material, is effectively admitting that this is for Donald Trump. When would he, in your view, potentially have to plead the Fifth?
He has been ordered to appear at 2 o'clock on Monday by the Honorable Judge Wood because she posed a number of questions to his lawyers in court today about Michael Cohen's law practice. They couldn't provide answers to some of the most basic questions. She became very frustrated, and she basically ordered them to bring their client, Michael Cohen, to court 2 p.m. this Monday so that he could be available to potentially answer her questions from the bench, which cannot be a good sign for Michael Cohen, and it may force him into a position, Ari, where he may have to plead the Fifth in open court on Monday afternoon.
It's extraordinary. Michael, you're not a court reporter. You're an attorney. You have a side in this case, which we're always clear to our viewers about. But you sound like a busy court reporter who gleaned a lot of good intel at this hearing today. Because what you're saying, to be very clear with everyone, is that as soon as Monday, there might be a put up or shut up for Michael Cohen to say that on the grounds that he could incriminate himself, he will not speak in open court, which has major ramifications for him, for Donald Trump, for anything he did that touches the Mueller probe. This all started with evidence gathered there, and obviously for the Stormy Daniels case. I want to turn to something else I want to put on the screen for folks to understand. These are new docs. This is, right here, some of the key material that the judge knows that we don't yet in court. When there's certain things to support something, they can be publicly redacted, so only the judge has it, as you know. When we look here and you see some of these redactions, to me, they sounded like places where the feds were saying, we have reason to believe there was ongoing misconduct or concealment that made the raid urgent. What was your interpretation, and what was the significance of this in your view as a lawyer?
Well, I had the same interpretation that you did, Ari, when I saw these documents. I think that one of the reasons why they executed the warrant so quickly, or when they did on Monday, is they were concerned the documents were going to be destroyed or spoliated, as they say legally. And that's one of the reasons why they did that. But they mentioned in court today that they believe that some of the documents that may have been seized could go back as far as 30 years. So, look, this is a lot of documents, and there's probably a lot of potential misconduct in these documents if what we've heard in the past relating to Michael Cohen's conduct and his tactics is to be believed.
On behalf of Stormy Daniels, who has pushed a lot of this out, what do you say on her behalf today? How does she view all this?
Well, with each passing day, she becomes more vindicated relating to the fight that she's conducted. You know, she sacrificed a lot, Ari, over the course of this process. Not a lot of people have reported on that, but she's put herself on the line, and her family's gone through a tremendous amount, and someday that's going to be reported.
The nature of the criticism of the process from your side on behalf of your client was effectively that it was unfair throughout, that Mr. Cohen was not acting in good faith, as the lawyers would say, or worse, was acting improperly or potentially feloniously. Does the pattern that the feds are starting to draw in court today support and match that in your view?
It's 100% consistent. It's exactly what we've been saying, and I think ultimately it's going to be proven by way of these thousands, if not millions, of documents. And let me say this. You showed the video of Michael Cohen sitting on the bench with some friends of his, on a beautiful day here in New York. Really ironic, because while he was doing that, I was in court and I was listening to Judge Wood criticize his attorneys for their inability to get simple answers to the most basic questions. And I think on at least 2 occasions, she asked them if they had access to their client.
Client list,
to their client.
Or to Michael, yeah.
To Michael to answer questions. So if this guy had time to sit on a bench and take in the sunshine while his attorneys were in federal court, perhaps he should have been in federal court assisting the judge and getting answers to the questions she posed.
It's an extraordinary series of developments that you've been in the middle of, and I know you were in court today and busy, so I appreciate you coming on the beat tonight to share your first reaction. Micheal Avenatti, as always, good to talk with you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.